Devin, it's good to see
How's
you
it going,
again,
buddy?
man.
You
Good,
too, man.
man.
How's life? Yeah.
Good, good.
Life okay?
Yeah, yeah, kicking ass, taking some names, which is
Yeah,
usually.
you seem to have a question mark at the end of you saying yeah, so I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt.
I
You know?
am at work today
Oh,
in
understood.
the
Say
office.
no more.
So if I put this down, it'll just be fires everywhere. Then I'm just going,
Yeah. Well, oh, dang, man. I think this is good to know, and now we're on the same page, so onward.
that's it. How you going? Is the $1 million question.
It has been a very complicated couple of years, but I think as the name of this new record suggests, even if it's complicated, we work through it, and that's what I've done. And it seems like the pendulum swings in both directions, and then it can go really far into the shit zone, and then eventually it starts to swing back, and now we're swinging back, and so. I'm just really glad that me and all the people I care about hung on during that swing.
Yeah,
You
man.
know?
Well, I saw you in Brisbane recently. Was it
Yeah,
recently? How ago was that?
yeah.
Oh,
Uh, eight
if
months maybe?
yeah,
It
yeah,
would
yeah,
have been.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember it was cool. I really enjoyed being back there actually.
Yeah, because it'd been a while. Been a little while since we've seen you.
It had
Yeah.
been, yeah. It was like the whole pandemic and everything, but it's funny, and I don't know if it happened with you, but it's those 3 years that we were kind of on our own there in many ways. When I finally did reconnect with certain territories, like went back to Australia or went back to UK or whatever,
Mm.
you realize how much you have in common with certain places. And Australia is, I realized when I did that tour last year how comfortable I am there in a sense. I think maybe it's just everybody laughs at similar things. I don't know.
I think we're very similar to Canadians, is
I
what it
think
is.
so.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
We're
think
about the
so.
same.
It is just a huge swath of land and with only people living in the fringes, right?
That's right. Yeah, nothing in the
That's
middle.
same with
Nothing in the
Canada.
middle.
Same with
Yeah.
Canada.
Man, I gotta say, I love Powernerd.
Thank you.
I've been on the Devon train for like 25 years now.
Thanks, buddy.
I call it the Devon train because
Yeah.
there's lots of carriages. Um,
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, I love the fuck out of this album, dude. It's really
Thank you.
good.
Thank you, brother. I it kicked my ass in ways that I've never had my ass kicked. It was like it started because it's the first record of a four record process, right? Like that was the nature of Power Nerd. And it started when I had written it as so it's like sort of a fun rock and straight ahead sort of record. I was trying to reference things from my childhood, like the the bands that were for some reason I ended up being in the prog circle, which is interesting to me because when I was a kid it was just it was Highway to Hell and
Mm.
Motorhead and Judas Priest, and it was that sort of a thing that really appealed to me, and it was just going to be is like a homage to that kind of part of my life. But then during the process of making it, myself and the family went through a bunch of really uh, difficult times, and the nature of the record just changed, and it ended up becoming a lot more blown apart than I had ever anticipated.
Mm.
And almost you get to the point lyrically with it where the energy it takes to try to be poetic about what you're feeling is too much energy. So you just have to sort of say what you're feeling. And it was a I've never been through a record that was so emotionally demanding. And there's a certain amount of humor to that because again, it's like knuckle dragger, give me another beer. Like the whole idea was it was just supposed to be a kind of fun record.
Yeah.
And it ended up being this kick in the nuts, man, that was really, really ended up being important to me in a weird way.
Are you and your family okay now? You doing all right?
Yeah, everybody, you know what it's like, man. It's like things change and people pass
Yeah, man.
and life is, it's life. And I think that what ended up happening with Power Nerd is in the past, of course, I've had people leave or pass or what have you, but I don't think I've ever been emotionally ready to like really process those sorts of
Mm,
emotions.
yeah.
But then during this, it's like it just became so I couldn't suppress it, and then you just had to kind of work through it. And yeah, man, it was fucking really hard. I guess just I'm just a dumb dude, right? So I spend much of my life pretending I understand what I'm feeling, I guess. But then when things happen where you can't like um, rationalize it, you can't suppress it, and you just have to feel it. I remember thinking, man, it was like a crash course in like sadness and anger and all these things that I'm grateful for actually because it makes me realize how repressed I've been for so long. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
man.
but again, I'm not saying it to try and make it into a like a dramatic thing because this is just part of being
Yeah.
a human. Like, you go through it, everybody goes through
Yeah,
it.
man.
I just think that maybe the other times that I had gone through loss over the past 20 years, I'm so busy trying to get my shit together, being a parent or being, trying to get myself back on track or what have you, that I don't feel I really process those things. But once a crack in the dam appears, it's like all that stuff from the past starts coming out. And I was just like, whoa. And the craziest part about it is I had set the parameters for the Powernerd record as intentionally limited,
Yeah.
so I don't overthink it or try not to overthink it at least. So not only were we going through all this stuff, but then the deadline was so tight that um, I was trying to solve all these technical problems and figure out the studio and figure out where files were and all these things while still sort of trying to contend with this onslaught of like uncontrollable emotion. And it's like I went through the gamut of feeling like, man, I feel so stupid. I feel so weak for everything making me cry. It's like, what the fuck? Like I never gone through that, man. And it felt like, all those things were all those masculine kind of things that we're taught about, like be strong and all this. I was
Yeah,
like, dude, I
yeah.
can't. I'm like, it's too much. And I remember like the song Goodbye and Glacier. I was trying to sing this stuff and I just couldn't sing it because I was just so emotionally like blown apart. And so the workload became really about, well, how do you finish this on time amidst all this? And it was messy. That's the only way. That's it was not finished with like swaths of elegance and answers to the universal questions. It was just finished with like snot,
But it came
you
out
know.
good. It came
Well,
out
I
good.
did.
You did
Thanks.
good.
I think that's why Power Nerd works as a title. That's why I hung on to it because I'm just like, man, I guess we got through it, but man.
Oh man, but you didn't mention the fun stuff. I was driving to it in the car the other day. I had my son. You mentioned
Yeah.
Knuckle Dragger, and
Yeah.
the line, "I've got big balls." Man, he lost it. Hey, and he's like, he thought it was the funniest shit in the world, and I'm like, "Don't tell your mother, all right?" No one hear me.
Well, what's funny is it's like number one, I'm thrilled to hear that, but number two, it's like I remember when I put that out, like people in my management and label, they're just like, dude, why did you have to say you got big balls? And I was like the same reason we asked Jamie to say petting the cat in a hardcore voice. It's like the whole thing is
Man,
like if there's anything I recognize through the process is how little I know about anything, about life and emotions and myself. And I know more about myself than I used to, but I think that there's really something that happens in the midst of that where in a vacuum, I think we can pretend that we are, centered and balanced and
mm,
all this. But when shit really goes south, you see where you're at.
yeah,
And I was shocked at a certain point to see that where I was at was a lot more like rough than I had anticipated. And when I did come to those conclusions, what was also funny was recognizing I'm like, how could you have ever not seen this? How could you have ever thought you were different than this. It was like an honesty bomb that I was just so grateful for. I I'm happy to not go through it again, but but it's like I got to see who I actually was and where I actually find myself, as opposed to a more romantic image of where I am and what I would like to feel like I am as a person. It's like all that went out the window. I was like, nope, that's not who you are, man. That's who you are, right?
Man, it's heavy,
Yeah,
dude. It's heavy.
yeah,
I went
yeah,
through something not long ago, and
yep,
you go. It's like that cupboard. You just shove it all in the cupboard, and then it's
right,
busted open. You go, no,
dude.
no, no, and then yeah.
Oh my God, man. And what was so funny is all it took was, it was like a series, it was like a series of things, one loss after loss after
Yeah.
loss. And by the time it got to the third one, exactly like you say, I was like, holy shit, I think I have put everything into that closet for so many years. And I thought that if the door was closed, it's like it's dealt with in a way. But when it started coming out, I was like, oh shit, I hadn't dealt with anything. I haven't processed,
Yeah.
the death of my grandparents, and like just everything was just. And so when it did finally hit, I was like, uh-oh. And I remember it's like I'd be making sure there was nobody in the studio, and I like shut the door and close the windows and just go through these emotions that were just so new and uncontrollable. And I was
Yeah.
just like, I felt like I was going crazy, man. I was like, what the fuck? But at the end of it, I also felt like there was a part of me that was like, no, it's not that you're going crazy. In fact, it's the opposite. You're finally allowing yourself to feel these real human things. Like
Mm.
the sadness of it is, this isn't like an abstraction. This isn't, you can't talk yourself out of these emotions. And and it was just so much snot. That's the only thing I
Snot is
remember.
the word.
Well, yeah, it's like I'd be
Yeah.
singing it. It's so
Yeah.
emotionally like
Yeah.
fucked up, and then you're just like snot all the time. And I'm like, so there's an element of humor to that too, where you're like, this is a mess, man. There's nothing elegant about this at all, right?
But man, it's got a good flow. The album's got, obviously it's got those funny moments. It's got real heavy. It's the riffs as well, man. Like you still know how to write those big chunky riffs that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I appreciate the awareness of that, man. I honestly felt like a big part of Power Nerd for me, I'll shout this from the rooftops, is over the course of the pandemic, I did puzzle and
mhm,
snuggles and light work, and it was all weird, really. But because the time was weird, it was just, you know, if my music, or if the music exists as a reaction to my life, then my life was crazy, and that's what it sounded like to me. But also during that time, I've written this opera called The Moth,
well,
and it's just the most intense thing that I've ever done musically by a huge margin. And I know that because that's the next thing I release, I'm thinking, man, I think it would be nice as a gesture to the audience that has tolerated all these years of me like going off in all these different directions. If I was able to take some of these songs that I've been writing that are more riff based and
yeah.
are a little heavier and aren't as like, abstract, and just be like, thank you so much for allowing me to do this. Here's something. It's almost like it's like an olive branch. It's like, here's something, here's a white flag. And people have been like, oh, that's cool that you've kind of got a little more straight ahead with it. And I'm like, well, the reason why I'm presenting it now is what I'm doing next is so fucked that I just hope on some level it'll make up for it, right?
Oh, I'm so keen. I'm so keen. And you mentioned Snuggles before, man. I love
Yeah,
I love that album. Like
me too. Me too.
it helps me get to sleep.
Yeah,
Whenever
me
I have
too.
to sleep in another room, whether I'm sick or in the doghouse, I I put it on. As soon as I hear that psst, I'm gone.
Yeah,
I'm out. I love it.
that whole I remember writing both Puzzle and Snuggle. Like I would write it until late at night, and then I would fall asleep listening to the roughs like the rough mixes of it because
Yeah.
it was one piece, and its function really played into what you're speaking about. And I also remember with the Snuggles record in particular, hearing it way up in the north of Sweden at this uh, uh, getaway that was just beautiful. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm really, as difficult as it was and as confusing as it is for a lot of the audience that are looking more towards what I'm doing with Powernerd or anything like
Mm.
that. I had to do it, and I often feel with my creative inclinations, my fingers are always crossed that what I feel I have to do is not just going to ostracize the audience because I'm going to do it. Like if I feel like something is compelling to me,
Yeah.
there's nothing that I can do to dissuade myself from following that, whether or not it's Ziltoid or Empath or the Hummer or Alien or any of these things that I've done. They're all compulsions. Casualties of Cool. I remember finishing Casualties of Cool and going, oh shit, how do I explain this one?
But that's another great album. You know what? I was
What?
listening.
Go ahead.
No, 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 man. I was just gonna say, man. I don't know if you're a Danny Elfman fan. I hear little bits and
Yeah,
pieces, but
absolutely. Yeah.
Big Mess. I was listening to Big Mess again not long ago, and I hear
Yeah.
so much. I don't know which side it's from, but I hear so much of you in that album that it could be. There's songs and parts that I think that could be a Devin album. Like, I don't know, man.
I
Have you ever spoken to him?
no, I mean honestly, man, I'm awful as a networker. I'm just the worst. It's not like I don't care, but it's something very similar to that. I think to myself, if if a musician and I are meant to speak, then we will.
Mm,
But never have I sought out somebody because I feel that we have similarities or anything. It just seems like what would you talk about? Like what would I talk about with Danny Elfman? It's like, and I also feel that the industry is small enough that if we were as similar as some people might think that we are, we probably would have met by now.
yeah.
You know? And I got a buddy. He's always like, "Oh, we should go to this thing because so and so is going to be there, and you can like meet him and all this." And I'm thinking, or hear me out. I could stay home and watch how it's made. You know, I've got, and I don't know, but I got enough buddies in my life too. You
Yeah.
know, I got enough musicians. I got a lot of people, and I've got so many relationships I don't take lightly. You know, I don't. It's like, I'm there for my family and my friends and the people who are my friends as well. Like we take care of each other, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't. Man, I wish I felt differently about it because it probably would have benefited the career at some point. But I just don't. I don't care about meeting famous people at all. In fact, most of the time they often end up being the most irritating,
Yeah.
right? Because they can get away with things conversationally that you wouldn't let your buddy get away with, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. You're like, ugh. Yeah,
You'd like you're like, wow, that's oh, okay, I guess we're listening to you talk now. Great.
that. Man, one thing I did want to ask you though, and I just want to ask your blessing for it. And if it's not cool, that's okay.
Yeah,
Middle-aged man, I love that
yeah,
song. It's a demo.
yeah,
I wanted to record a cover of that for maybe a
yeah,
charity single, if you would be okay with that.
yeah, it'd be great. Yeah,
Cool.
man, I'd love to hear it, man. I'd love to hear it when you're done. Just like send it through. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah?
That song was an interesting one too because that was at the end of Empath and oh no, was it Empath or Lightwork? And I think it was another one of those moments where you can pretend you're a certain way for a certain amount of time, but then that even might have been we have moved like 4 times in the past 2 years amidst all this, which is another story entirely. But one of the places that I lived for 10 minutes there had a full-length mirror in the bathroom, and I remember getting out of the bathtub and catching a look of myself as I was climbing out of the tub, and I remember thinking, "Oh boy." the the illusion of youth is now completely shattered, and we now sit as a 52-year-old human being, right?
Well, I'm a 43-year-old and I got rid of all those mirrors. So
Oh, you know what? I might have to take, might have to take your cue on that because, yeah, man, that was a lesson in violence.
So of course, are you still on a break from touring? I know we got to wrap up, but I just want to know, are you still just chilling back for a while?
Well, there's never much chilling. I mean, I try to take
No.
Saturdays and Sundays to kind of do housework and catch up on things. Um, but I love my work, and uh, being a DIY musician making extremely strange music in a dying industry means that I work all the time trying to
Mm,
keep things going, right? And uh, so if I'm on tour or if I'm at home, I'm always going to be busy. But touring is something that we've confirmed tours now in a bunch of territories, but they're shorter than they were. And
yeah.
now it's like my parents are older. I inherited a dog, and all these things make like traveling much more difficult. You
Yes.
know, when your parents are older and you see them declining, and you're the person that takes care of them, it's like it makes the whole act of traveling and all the sort of motley crew rat shit that we were taught touring was in the 80s just seems so profoundly stupid,
Yeah.
you know? So my reasons for continuing to tour and to book these tours coming up in the future is because I really appreciate people allowing me to do what I do, and to play for those people is essential, and I really enjoy doing that. But at the same time, you know, people are saying, "Well, we should tour here and break into this market and all this," and I'm like, "Nah." You
I
know,
love it.
like it seems like when I'm really honest with myself, I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No, like people are like, well, you know, this market here, you know, they're not quite convinced that your brand of music is what they like. So you got to keep hitting it. And I'm like, maybe it just doesn't work there. And why is that an issue? Like it's like trying to woo a lady that has no interest in you. You know what I mean? It's like, no, man, but I will certainly play for the people
Mm,
who want to hear it, and I'm happy to do that. But at the same time, the work-life balance needs to be a lot more focused on than it used to be in the past because you know your parents, dude, and your
yeah.
kids, all these things that you got to take care of. That's way more important than any of the music. And as much as music is like arguably the most important thing in my life, it can't be. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the real life things are really where the value and your value as a person is. And again, going back to schmoozing with famous people or whatever, I often think when I meet somebody who's like a powerful person in the industry, my first thought is, money aside, how would this person fare in a zombie apocalypse with you? You
Would
know, like
would
me and my buddies can do shit. We got
yeah.
things together. We can build things. We can do things. You know, we can share responsibilities. We share hierarchy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when it comes down to my long answer for touring, the answer is yes.
Yes, yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out the balance.
Well, man, Australia's or you come here all the time. So we're
Oh, I
always
love it there.
we
I
love
love it
you.
there. It's one of my favorite places, man. It reminds me of Canada, you know, and the sense of humor is similar. And said in the last interview, it's just like Canada. It's this huge fuck off continent with like very few people there, right?
It's best. But hey man, it's
Yeah.
always good to talk to you and thanks for
You
hanging
too,
out
my
again,
friend.
man.
Always, brother. Thank you for the support, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, let's do it.